I don't know this round.
It's just on the paper. It's written.
It's all taken down, there's no toilets, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It's gone. Why? This isn't what it is. There's like nothing in there, I don't know. There's some sign on the board.
So I'm wondering,
It's a white piece.
so I'm saying September 20. They kind of have this memory for
One of the computer closets.
I was just wondering about the time they did.
So
Oh,
the one that you
Yeah, it is.
can tell that
Like a classic.
like they can put like
That's the new chart. That was the old chart, in with the new chart.
This is more accurate, I like it.
Yes.
We don't know.
Echutanwe kahat kwan. All right, anybody got anything to start with? Anything on your mind? We're 17 minutes in. If anybody wants to learn how to say Alaska Airlines is terrible, yesterday's beginning Tlingit. And you'll hear me say. I made sure to wait until we were broadcasting. Sorry.
Did they all say against doing the?
What's that?
Do they not do the language stuff?
No, they were just very mean to me yesterday.
Oh.
Anyways, anything on your mind? Language stuff? Any other stuff? Questions?
How was the language conference today?
It was good. We're forming a language consortium officially between UAS, Central Council, Gold Belt Heritage Foundation, Sealaska Heritage Institute, and Juneau School District. We're going to invite all tribes in Southeast Alaska, our 3 First Nations who are inland, anybody else who wants to sort of be a part of it, but there will be a driving force. You know, you can't have all the brains in the same room. But annually, we're going to hold a language symposium / town hall style gathering to talk about what's going on with Tlingit. We will also be working to develop a centralized curriculum office, which would, so that teachers can focus on teaching and then their curriculum ideas to work with this office to make resources accessible. One of the other missions is to develop a Tlingit school. So that's sort of something that's probably going to happen. Which leads me to 2 other thoughts. One is Tom Thornton will be here tomorrow. Workshop from 1 to 3 in this building. On the 2nd floor. But I can't remember. 221, maybe.
I think it's in
the glacier room?
Yes.
Okay. From 1 to 3, talking about place names. This should be awesome. I think I sent an email out to everybody that also has a link where you can actually schedule individual time with Dr. Thornton if you want to meet with him and talk about his work or anything else. Some of the ideas that we should be thinking about, I think, are working with existing governments to just submit this massive application and say, let's just restore all Tlingit place names and make all these other names also known as, which I think makes a lot of sense to me. They do have existing rules about you can't have things that are hard to say, but I think that's foolish. Like by whose standard, right? And so, anyways, so those are some things. There's also going to be some quarterly meetings with this language consortium. It's pretty exciting. Yeah, and we've got a lot of Tlingit. We got a lot of people who could teach Tlingit, and so we're just going to try and create those opportunities by building a school. And a daycare. The other thing is Gold Belt just got some funding. I will forward you guys some applications. They have part-time positions for developing teachers. So if you want to be a Tlingit language teacher at some point, apply for one of these positions. They have a number of positions that are opening up under these 2 grants that they received. Yeah, so it's exciting. Yeah. Okay.
When is the Alaska Native Language and Studies program going to be its own separate degree out of the BLA? Because I take the class I'm in right now.
What's that?
I take the class I'm in right now, and it's German.
Oh, we can certainly talk about that off the record, maybe.
Yeah.
But yes, that's certainly something in the works. There's a couple components to that. One is we are probably going to hire a tenure track Alaska Native Studies faculty here. It'll be awesome because then I could focus more on language. Someone else could focus on both language and studies or studies and arts. I'm not sure how it will play out. So getting a faculty member would help. I think the argument is there. I got all the proposals for it. So I need you to probably, and anyone else who's interested, come through like 30 different proposals and see how to do this thing. I think there's a couple components to it. One is taking all the Alaska Native language, all the Alaska Native content courses, take them away from anthropology and English and these other places and ship them over to Alaska Native Studies. And then work cooperatively and say, okay, anthropology, you should add these classes to your degree program. English, you should add these classes to your degree program. And so those are a couple of things that I think need to happen. And then we structure this degree, and we're trying to do it statewide. We got to work with Fairbanks a little bit and say, because Fairbanks, you can get a degree in Eskimo, I think, and you can get a degree in Alaska Native Studies and Rural Development. And I think one of the things that I would really like to see is to have Alaska Native languages and studies always be together, so that languages don't have to sit on their own. Because you have lots of people who are interested in the culture, lots of people singing, lots of people doing artwork, lots of people writing papers about Tlingit. But if you can study that, you should have at least a year of language, of Alaska Native language under your belt. And the other thing is, we should be consolidating these programs as well so that we can sort of stand together. And the hope is to have one degree through the whole UA system. So whether you're in Anchorage or Fairbanks or here, you follow the same general set of courses. And then you could study, there'd be 3 tracks in there. One would be language, for language teachers, researchers, advocates. One would be art for Northwest Coast artists, or Alaska Native themed artists. And then the other one would be, I don't know what to call it, cultures, organizations. But this would be for folks who want to work for tribes or corporations or agencies, intertribal sort of consortia or agencies that work. That's sort of the goal with that stuff. But I don't have a real exact timeline. Yeah. Okay.
Is Tom Gordon coming to our class on Thursday?
I don't know. I haven't received any confirmation. He hasn't walked through the door.
It's on his schedule, but it says like maybe in like parentheses.
Oh, really? That's how the brush up. Oh, that's what I told her to tell him. Brush up on your Tlingit if you come. So I'm not sure people might. It'd be really neat to, because one thing is to look at these place names, which you could probably. So for Thursday, and ideally, if you're going to go to the Wednesday thing, let's say find me 20 place names that have some directional, relational terms built into them. And let's share those with each other on Thursday. So that's our homework Thursday, is looking at place names. We should have these things on our mind, and there's so many of the directional relational terms are in there. Same with body parts. And so it's really interesting in Tlingit how naming body parts and naming landscape seem to function in very similar ways. So there used to be a cart over there that said, "Do not remove this cart." Oh, there it is. Okay, so get your sentences ready. I'm gonna move this camera so it's like focusing on us. And I gotta fix the audio. So you should all have 5 sentences that have directional relational terms. Let me fix the audio on my computer so it goes through the TV. Now we'll be ready. Okay. Let's go first. Read them all 5. Some of them.
Batchkant James Vancouver way City. So could city functions as a placeholder?
Yeah, so is there at that place. And when you have you don't, it eliminates, right? So we have certain verbs that, like yeyati, to reside in some certain place. Yeyati. There's no need. It substitutes for that. Okay. Well, yeah, okay, let's do one of these.
Thank you, Tangi. I guess I just cut copy a cut that jet.
One more time.
Thank you, Tangi. I guess I just cut jet a cut that jet.
Anybody spot the directionals in?
Thank you, Tangi. I guess I just cut jet a cut that jet.
Cut. Cut. Was cut in? On arriving Kajite. Right o'clock.
To eat young chocolate.
One more time.
To eat young chocolate.
Direction. Eat. Chief, you got any sentences for us?
Aslakach, Watsich, Dempster Highway, Tatke Khana Yanigut.
I don't know why it's coming through my computer. It's through my computer instead of TV, but I think, I don't know if everybody hears. Let me try changing it one more time. One more time.
Aslakach, Watsich, Dempster Highway, Tatke Khana Yanigut.
Catch. Direction.
Mr. Highway, or no, the highway, there's a T at the end?
Yeah, there's a There's one more.
Found a porcupine on the.
It's porcupine. Atyanakutke. Yeah, it's walking around there. Machish. Good.
Tlingit Linguistics tunach táax'aa.
Tuna. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Gudach sawe de kachwek.
Nadok tayi asetin way hadadushi.
That's what I mean.
Ways they gave ki askatu dach awagut.
Way do out the sin.
Catch it. Yeah.
Way do out the sin.
Ach, jidach se en ikachway.
Okay. Catch it.
Yuge yan khagut.
Shkunde yan chatzek. Chatzek.
Wait, what's the direction? Hey. You have one?
Sakvein kakwe ka undak gidi de khatin takte. Day. Fair enough, gidi day.
Okay. Good.
We Kaitlidi Shaki.
Wow. Wait, catch it.
We Kaitlidi Shaki.
On the top of the dog's head?
No, Kaitlidi.
Oh, on top of the seagull's head?
Oh, no. Okay. That doesn't make sense. But
Okay.
it's got a direction.
Okay, it does. You might need some more. Like, it could be like Shakidach with the clean, it flew from the top of it. So Shaki could be the top of someone's head.
Oh, there's in my head.
No. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Shaki. No.
Probably say, Shaki would be like if it was like had a part thing in your head, maybe. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I haven't.
Aksha Shaki etikate the
Anyone makes more sense. Okay. Akhdushki Nadauch Tayi.
What is it?
Yep.
Okay.
Nisabun hini yuma ho ka ni hosti.
Gotcha. Okay. Chish. Anybody on the phone? Phone 2 Khagewa. Sentence Gay Jiwu.
Wekanas at Nakhatsuki, Weshakasani. Wekanas at Nakhatsuki, Weshakasani. Yayish, wait away our shop, our she, wait a couple yes. Nakhatsuki, shop, Akuti, Yaka. Did you hear that one?
No, say that one more time.
Nakhatsuki, shop, Akuti, Yaka.
Okay. Yeah, so, Asa?
Oh, you want me to finish reading them?
Sure.
Wait, they yantan, wait, look at the edge. Shana, our good worker, you shut day.
So about, let's just look at that last one. Say that last one again.
Shana, our good worker, you shut day. He walked through the mountain towards his wife.
Oh, you weren't supposed to give us the answer. Good job. Okay, good. And I think I'll collect these and I'll take a look at them. You can give me your 5 sentences at some point.
Can we email them to you so it's in like?
Yeah, let's just do that. Why don't we do that? That way I don't have to get any papers back to anybody. Send me 5 sentences, and I'll get them back to you next week. All right.
Tonight or tomorrow?
I'll just have them by Thursday. Okay. So let's take a look on the screen. Everybody remembers did everybody do the pretest in here?
I know I failed it bad.
Oh, you can't fail a pretest.
I did.
Well, when it becomes the actual test, that's when it becomes a problem. So the goal wasn't to intimidate or to make anyone feel bad. It was just to sort of throw some stuff out there. This is the type of stuff we'll be looking at. And you should at least, by the end of the semester, you should at least be able to answer all of those questions. So I think we're going to get some classifier wallpaper, like Quesky was talking about. Sell that at Home Depot. I'll see if we can get an arrangement with like a tattoo parlor in town. Get it on your forearms and have it available.
People who get below like 70% on the test have to get a classifier.
Right. Well, that should be a badge of honor, not a badge of shame. It is to get like Shaadaax'ษ์on your tattooed on yourself.
The placement could be the shame or honor.
Oh.
Honor on the arm, shame.
Right. That's what I'm looking for. But you have to put it backwards. All right. So without looking at any notes or anything, let's just see what we know going through these answers. And through the course of the semester, we're going to look at this type of content. The additional stuff we're going to do is we're going to continue like working through this Understanding Tlingit Verbs book, and then we're going to get into what is going to be the next book, which is talking about how to conjugate these verbs and how to spot these different conjugations. So when you encounter a verb, you'll know basically how to interpret it. Starting from listening for the root, and then listening for some common components that exist within it. You should also be able to increase your ability to conjugate your own sentences, come up with your own sentences. Part of it is understanding how these directional relational terms work, and then continuing to build on nouns and other parts of speech. Let me get this thing going. All right, so looking through, the first thing we have is a set of Tlingit classifiers. So the classifier is really fascinating to me in Tlingit. The default classifier is 0. The zero group is the default. If you need the verb to do something else and you're sort of specifying, and sometimes you're saying, well, awachut is to drag, which is a zero group. Awsechut is to drag something by a handle. So sometimes you're specifying how the action is functioning. Sometimes you're fine-tuning the way the verb works. Chatin, I see it. Chosatin, I saw this specific thing. Chachitin, I'm watching this thing. And then the S, so basically the standing sort of rule is, let's say a verb is invented, often a zero classifier, some of them are just always S or L. And zero seems to really stand for just something to be a certain way. There's a lot of state verbs, or a lot of just something generally to occur. When you start specifying, sometimes like you're really making a difference about how the verb is being executed, you would kick it over to an S group classifier. That would be the first step. Then if you needed to specify from there, you'd have an L group classifier. However, if the root contained some sibilant sound, like some S sound, then it would jump over the S and go straight to the L. The SH is sort of a special group. There's not a whole lot of verbs that use that. And when I was talking to Zeosh, to his knowledge, there's not one verb group that uses all four of these classifiers. Plus I and minus I really has to do with whether the verb has occurred or not. So a good way to remember, should it be plus I or should it be minus I? Plus I really comes down to the verb has occurred. And we'll look at these different verb modes. And then we'll look at, the majority of them use minus I, because it might happen, let it happen, if it happens, it didn't happen, it will happen, it won't happen. All of these things, the key part of it is, has the verb occurred, and if not, it will often be minus I. And then plus D, minus D, we've talked about. A lot of it has to do with middle voice, doing something to itself, or something where the subject is also the object of the verb. Also when you want to make a transitive verb intransitive, so you're kicking the object out of the verb. And then some verbs are just natural. So moving across, one at a time. And when we go minus I, plus I, we should be able to remember these forms. And eventually when we're looking, and some of the things we're going to do here is we're really breaking things up into chunks. We're going to arrange some fluent speakers come in and spend time with us just so we can break it up. So we're not always just sort of dissecting language, but we're actually engaging in language as well. But whenever we hear a verb, we should be able to spot what the classifier is, and it helps us tell. It helps tell us what's going on. So starting from the top left here, and this is what we call zero group minus D minus I. So a lot of times when we would code this, some of the things we're going to do this semester is sentence glossing, glossing in Tlingit, where you're blowing things up to all of its individual components. And sometimes you would know what classifier it is. So for this, you would put minus D, zero, group, minus I. That's how you code it. Right? So usually, is it plus D or minus D, comma, which group is it in, comma, is it plus I or minus I? And usually those are in parentheses. So a lot of times when you would be coding things, so the first step is to sort of take this sentence and to break it up with hyphens, using all the individual components in their unaltered form. So ach, ya, gu, we put ach, ya, k, that hyphen, u, right, the high tone. And so we're trying to blow those things up so we can see what it looks like before they start altering, before pieces start altering. Then there would be another section under there where we're sort of labeling what these things are. And we're going to goof around with these labels all semester. What's in this one? So the first one, top left, in our classifier group. And if you don't have this thing in front of you and you wanted to take notes, you could just make a thing with 16 squares. It's a 4x4 box. And this is how we look at the classifier. It helps us understand how it functions in Tlingit. The first one is 0. It's called the 0 group. The minus I form is 0. What's the plus I form?
Yeah, with the dots.
Yeah, with the 2 dots over it, because if there's a w, so this is why you have do wasa, because it's a ya classifier, but if there's a rounded vowel before it, it will become a w. And so it's tricky because I used to always think, oh, there's the perfected marker, but it's not.
These are sounds in the verb.
Yes.
So if it has none of the sounds in the other 14 boxes, then it's a 0 marker.
Yeah.
That's how you.
When I say haku, the 0 right before it. It's a 0. So when the verb goes in the 0 group, plus D, minus I, what do we got? It starts with a D. It doesn't have an I. What would it have?
Deal.
No, that's a good guess. DA. 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 Right? So it's the 0 group, so once it goes plus D, there's nothing else there but the D. So this is how we can sort of remember that. So along those lines, if it's going plus D and it's plus I, what do we have?
DI.
Yes, yeah. Oops. Okay. So this is something we should just commit to memory, where it exists. The one that will get tricky is, at least if you're anything like me, which I hope you're not, is the 0 group minus D. The reason for that is because the plus I has an A in it, right? So otherwise, you always look minus I, it's usually going to have an A, but in this case, it's reversed. So it's just one you've got to just commit to memory. That's how it's going. Okay. S group minus I. For everything on this side, everything that's minus D, it's minus I, and it's not 0, will have an A.
SA.
Hmm?
SA.
SA. So the plus I form would be SI. For everything except for the 0 group, when we get down to minus I plus D, it'll actually be really easy to remember because there's no vowel. There's no vowel, what is it? Huh? The 2 underneath that should be really easy to get. When we right now these things are functional. Plus D, plus I. Z. Okay, so we're going to get a very similar pattern to this one. Okay? Oops. Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Minus I. That's really interesting. On that side, it adds a, no, there's no pattern.
Well, there is, but yeah, so.
I'm so excited.
When it's plus I, there's an I, except in the case of the 0 minus the.
I thought there was reason to this.
Well, it kind of is, but last one.
Isn't it the J?
Of course.
It's plus I.
J.
So there we go. This is the complete group of classifiers. It's good to know. There is a pattern. It's a complicated pattern, but if we took the top left 2 out of the equation, 0 and ya, the rest like makes sense. J, I guess, is getting kind of, I don't know, SH plus D equals J. Sure, why not? The others, we can start to figure out how they work. But yeah, there is minus I plus I, minus I plus I. And we can learn how to spot. Yeah.
Would it be like GE?
No, that is JI 0. Oh wait, Ja'in?
Yeah.
Which Ja'in? There's no verb there.
Isn't Gene a verb?
It's like wush Ja'in means to do, well, Wushye Jitune is really working together. Wushyein is it's a contracted form. It's usually used for pulling up the totem pole stuff. It means do this together with your hands are together. Your hands are being together. So it's sort of an abbreviated form of using something.
But a verb with JI in it, because at the beginning of it, is it anywhere in it or at the very beginning?
So all of these will be exactly to the left. One space left of the root. Nothing ever comes between the classifier. Ida?
Can you say what the S and the L mean again?
Yeah. So if there's some verbs are just S and L classifiers, that's the only form they have. But there's a lot of verbs where 0 is the default form for whatever this verb is to occur. But if you need to specify, it will jump down first to an S, and then they'll make one with an L. Unless the root has some S sound in it, then it'll go straight to that. Sometimes it's just changing the way the verb is functioning. Like we go from seeing to seeing something specific to watching something. And sometimes it's classifying the type of action that we're looking at, which is why these are called extensors. They exist in all and not in any languages. They're called classifiers, though. Because Tlingit is always classifying things. Sometimes the verb is changing a variety of things from the root to the thematic prefixes to the classifier, depending on what type of object it is. And so that's why they call it the classifier. Because in some instances, like a wahut, I'm dragging this person along, whatever reason. But if I put him in a wagon and drag the wagon, it's ausihut, because it has a hand. So sometimes it's just saying the action is a little bit different. You need to specify that action for some reason.
Could we look at a verb to see where it puts it, like where the classifier is?
Yeah. And so that's what we'll do after we finish talking about this stuff. We'll just start looking at the mosquito story and we'll dive in. And some of the things, what we'll do with the mosquito story is we'll listen to it. Then we'll go through and you'll each take turns reading the sentence. And you tell me everything you can about that sentence. You blow it up. And some of the things I would like you to tell is, at the minimum, any directional relational terms you're spotting in there, any verbs, what the root is, what the classifier is. So, we've been playing Spot the Root for long enough that now we've got to play the 8th grade version, which is Spot the Root and the classifier, and then at some point tell me what what the classifier is. Right? So the way that we talk about these again, and you can use them in any combination, but we'd usually say minus d, 0, plus I.
And there's an assignment for each one on the left of what they are. Like you said, 0 are state verbs, and then it kind of.
A lot of state verbs have 0, but it's not always the case that all zeros are state verbs. But it seems to be the natural way for the verb to just happen. And then sometimes it gets more specific as we go through. And as you look at more verb examples, looking through the Edwards book, looking through the niche story book, just start looking at how those verbs function and what is the classifier. There's a list on Tlingit.info under the verbs tab where you could just look at them by classifier. There's all the 0 classifier verbs. There's all the S classifier verbs. The other thing is, remember, they move left and right. They don't move up and down. When we're conjugating them, typically they're just going to move from plus I to minus I, and that's it. But it depends entirely on them. There are some things when we get into making relative clauses, which are very handy, right? It's good that you're here. It's good to see you. I feel bad that your boat sunk, things like that. To tie these things together, the thing that gains the relative suffix will always be plus I. We'll shift it to plus I. So there's some other sort of things to just sort of learn how to, but this is the grammatical puzzle as far as how to put the language together. And I think you got to balance. You got to do parts of this, but then you just got to go hang out with the speaker and try to engage, try to hang with them, the language. Even if they look at you and they say, "Ik what day?" I'm gonna challenge you. It's happened to me. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll get beat up. Do I get here? Anything else? Phone? Internet? Anybody? Anything? Don't feel like you have to master it all now. We just sort of, we filled in the blanks. That's all we did. It's cool. It's all good.
Can you just explain what mine is?
Yes. So the most common version I would say, chat awachash. Chat awachash. He cut fish. Jin shabduchash. He cut himself. He cut his hand. So it usually goes to plus D if you're doing something to yourself. It's the most obvious way. And this is called, it's a reflexive property. Reflexive means to the self. But it's also the signal middle voice, which English doesn't have. Right? English, like subjects and objects, it's very clear who's doing what. Even though you could say, you know, I wrote on myself. I did this, you know.
Sorry, what did you call it?
Reflexive?
Oh, middle voice. Sorry.
Oh, middle voice. Sorry, middle voice. And then middle voice means the subject, kind of the object. And some verbs are just naturally middle voice. Like certain communications, like we're talking. Right? That's a L plus D minus I.
What is middle voice though? Like in English, is there not an English?
There's no middle voice in English. But, you know, so it's what it's saying is it's saying this subject of the sentence, he or she or you or me, is also the object. So it's saying I'm doing this, like for example, to say we're conversing. That means I'm talking, but I'm also listening. Right? So I'm active, but I'm also a recipient of action. And so that's what it signals. The other thing it might signal is you could say, someone says, "Dasa yeda ine." And you could say, "Yahuchatu." I'm reading this paper. So there's an object built into it. To remove the object from that verb, and not all verbs will allow. But you know, someone says, "Dasa yeda ine." Chatatu. I'm just reading. And that's saying there's no object in the verb. I'm kicking it out. And so we'll look at some examples. Just the best thing to do with the plus D, minus D thing is just to keep an eye on it. keep an eye out for it. Keep this chart around, carry it around and just keep it on your phone. Get your tattoos. Maybe we'll get a discount rate. Do it as a group. That's right.
Take 20 of these.
Would it count as cheating to use it?
Oh, that's right. The best thing to do is, just to go through these stories, and these are just different things you can do with, to stay in the language. I think listen to a lot of it, engage with speakers, engage with each other, try and form new sentences, but also go back to recorded and translated Tlingit that's been transcribed for you. Usually the Downhour stuff is very good. Lear stuff is very good. And just gloss it out. So what is this classifier? What is that one? And then when we start getting into the verb modes, then they'll start making more sense.
So if you said I cut myself, would that be a middle voice?
Yes. So that would kick over to plus two. So you could say, "Chweddechush," I cut myself. Chweddechush. So it kicks, and so it just jumps over to the other side. You get minus D plus D. So given the following verb theme, identify the components in Tlingit linguistic terms. We have 0. In parentheses, we have, O. In parentheses, we have G. And we have S, capital S, small s. We have a root symbol. Chan, which is underline X, high-toned A, N, and in parentheses, state. Now, underneath it is the Lear-Edwards theme. There's one slight difference that we'll talk about. Well, I guess two differences that we'll talk about. And then this means for S to love O. So going through and filling in, just sort of looking at the theme and trying to figure out how to, using Tlingit linguistic terms. What is the O?
Object.
What is the Ga?
Type.
Type. Grammatic prefix.
Conjugation.
Conjugation. What is the S?
Subject.
No, the capital S. Sorry. Little x.
Classifier.
What is the Hun? And what's in parentheses?
Type.
Type. Okay. So as we're learning how to read this theme, these are the things we're looking for. There are a couple of suggested changes on the table. One is inserting the root symbol, so just so it's clear where the root is, we get used to sort of symbol. The other is shifting the conjugation prefix out of the parenthesis form after it, and moving it to where it would actually appear, putting it in parentheses because it only appears in certain forms. The other thing is changing how we mark plus D verbs, so that the classifier would have to be marked 0 plus D, S plus D, L plus D, SH plus D, if the verb always occurs in plus D, which there are some. Everybody okay? Question? We're going to get to how all this stuff works.
What is the conjugation prefix? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is the color coding with the was it Crippen, cable, verb, prefix, suffix chart? Is that color kind of universal?
No. So theirs is just black and white. So what I do is I take their stuff and I make it into pictures. That's usually what I do. It helps me to sort of break it into different parts. I try to make it very visual as we go through and we'll look at these individual components. And again, we're just sort of covering what these different things are. and then we'll go through them piece by piece and look at how they function. And the conjugation prefix, it exists in certain forms. A couple things to remember about it: it will appear in all command forms. So if you encounter some new verb, or you look up some verb if you look up a verb in the Tlingit verb dictionary, there are certain forms that it will reveal itself, and if they don't have that form, like if there's just a straight perfective form, that doesn't really tell you how to conjugate the verb. Their sample sentences are amazing, but it's one of those things like if we all knew then what we know now, we would have gone for very specific modes. The things to remember, one is that the imperfective mode of a verb is unpredictable. So if you want to learn how to use a verb, and it's not in the Edwards dictionary, it's only in the Nash Story dictionary. You take it to a fluent speaker. Do you know this verb? Can you tell me, is there a command form you could use it? You know, and the command form will reveal it. The hortative form will reveal it. And this is why you'd say, cha is the command form to eat. Nata is the command form go to sleep. Gedan is the command form to stand up. Anna is the command form to sit down. So it reveals itself, although I just gave you the answer. The next question is a question down the road. But the other thing it does, because one thing you don't see on here, and that I didn't require on here, is there might be a different verb, and there might be a little squiggly line after. This one is actually doing something there as well. But what is that, the tilde that comes after the verb? You guys know what that thing is doing? It's telling you the stem variation. We'll get into stem variation. There's different categories. There's 4 different categories of stem variation. It's just one more thing to sort of pack into your brain.
Where is the tilde?
It's not on here because this is an invariable stem. It will always be short. In any verb mode, it will always be short. Future, past, perfected. Now, stem variation is really interesting. Future is the easiest, because it's always want to be long and high. Negative future will always be long and low. But the rest, the verb mode, what the stem will be, is determined by the conjugation clause. So you can usually remember there's 0 and there's everything else. And we'll get to that when we start unpacking stem variation in the very last day of class. We'll do it. Okay. Given the following verb theme, which is O, gut in parentheses, capital S, lowercase s, chan, which is a state verb, conjugate for person. How would you say, I love you?
It's the
You love me. We love y'all. And they love us. Now, even though we've reached consensus, I always forget I'm a waffler when it comes to certain things. One is, should we write it all together as one thing, or should we move the object out as its own separate word? The standing rule is if it is a single vowel, it attaches to the word. Everything else detaches. But most things that are open-ended and appear right before the verb might cause contraction within the verb itself. And we'll see that in other things down there.
Renee, do you know why is that an SI classifier there?
That's the form of the imperfective. And so for a state verb, when state verbs, so if we look at state verbs in the imperfective form, they'll be +a.
Okay.
And so and for a lot of these different forms, you could say, and so let me actually just pull that up real quick. And I can send you guys, if you're interested in a sneak preview, I was working on a verb form sheet. Drag it over here. And so this breaks, it gives you a sort of a code. It takes the verb theme and it applies it to a code so you can create some of these different forms. And Hakwas did a great job spotting some of the errors. Because I always, everything I make has typos on it.
Is this getting to be pretty universal among Tlingit learners? Like this stuff, or is this?
This is pretty high territory in Tlingit, and there's probably only 10 to 20 people who've actually really studied it. So there's a lot of people who internalize this stuff, you know, and you can, I think you can learn Tlingit without learning all these different rules in these different ways, but you would have to move in and live with the speaker and speak at least 50% Tlingit for the entire time you're living with that speaker for a couple of years. And I think you could probably do the same thing.
But I mean, like if you took that gold belt class on teaching, would this be kind of like part of the focus of it?
Probably. And so Gold Belt funded the classes that helped result in some of this research, which was the work of Jeff Rear and then the Dowenhowers and then Carrie Eggleston. And then this is what James Crippen and Seth Cable are working on as well, is trying to document these different things and then create these different charts. So you can just look at these charts and just sort of internalize some of this stuff. But with imperfective verbs, when they're act verbs, they're -i. When they're state verbs, they're +i. And that's how the classifier works for imperfectives. There's no motion verbs on there, there's no event verbs on there, because they don't have an imperfective. Are you okay? You alive? Okay. Fill in the blanks for this gigantic pronoun chart. So first of all, going down the left-hand side, this is a pronoun chart. We have independent, possessive, object, subject, postpositional. Somebody explain what those are. Independent. I'm not saying name them, I'm just saying tell me what they are.
Me.
Yeah, me.
I.
Well, so like, if someone says, what is an independent pronoun in Tlingit?
It's a pronoun that can like be on its own without attaching to something.
Yeah, it's not attached to anything grammatically. It's totally unattached. But cut with a high tone would be the answer to the first one. But before we go through and fill in them, what are possessive pronouns?
Mine.
Mine,
Yours.
your.
His.
And what are they commonly attached to?
It's nouns.
Yeah, nouns when they're being possessed. Kinship. Body parts.
Empty days.
Empty base. And certain verb conjugations like achtuwu, yak'e, Tlingit grammar dot u. Object? It's an object pronoun. I'm not saying the name of them. I'm saying I walked off the street like, hey, what is an object pronoun Tlingit?
I don't know, but don't do it to me.
How is that different though than the possessive? Because we just named all those things like my and your. Wouldn't that be the same as an object?
It's something that's being acted upon.
Yeah, so it's the recipient of some verb, right? So whoever's the one being acted upon, right? Subject?
The one initiating the action.
Yeah, one initiating the action. And post-positional.
The verb after the noun.
Not really.
Possessive markers there.
They have possessive markers in them, yeah. You named it. Just a second ago. It's the empty base. This is the empty base. And we'll see why it's a little bit different later.
What's an example of an object pronoun in English?
I told you. You laughed at me. I drank my coffee. So it's whatever's impacted by. It's not sometimes it's not the instrument, because you can have sometimes a subject, an instrument, and an object.
Doesn't have to be a pronoun.
No. It's specifically an object. Well, it is. It's always for that. Well, I guess it's not.
Is it a placeholder in the sentence?
Huh?
So like coffee would be the object?
Yeah, coffee would be the object. But if we wanted to use pronouns, in English, it would be me, you, him or her, whom, they, them. That would be them. Right. I talk to them. So it'd be any pronoun you'd put, and it's being affected by that.
The subject ones would be like I, they,
he or she.
Okay. Sorry to ask for clarification.
Okay. So on the left-hand side, we have 1S, 1P, 2S, 2P, 3H, 3N, INDH, INDN, RFLX, RECIP. Okay.
Were you asking if they were?
Yeah.
First
First
person,
person
second
singular.
person,
Yeah.
second person plural.
Yes,
Third person, third person plural.
3H,
Third human,
third human, 3N,
non-human,
3 non-human, INDH.
independent human,
Like someone, indefinite.
Indefinite independent. And then indefinite human, reflexive, reciprocal, and then the third person plural. All right, so moving through independent pronouns, first person singular. Oh wait, it's right there. Moving right along. First person plural.
Wuhan?
Yes. Aktif between Uhalaya. That's how it is. All his N's were voiced L's. Second person singular.
What, eh?
Oh. Second person plural.
Yaquan?
Third person human.
Who?
Non-human. Indefinite human. ha. Oops, put that item. Indefinite non-human.
At.
Yep. Reflexive.
Shush.
Shush. Reciprocal.
Whoosh.
Whoosh. Oh. Third person plural.
Huss.
So one thing you'll notice about all of these, they all have what? Items. None of the others will ever have tone. Ever. Okay. Let's go through possessive. Oops. It.
You know,
You're. Okay. Non-human. Independent human or indefinite human. At, low tone. Chush, low tone, or the SH. It's usually attached to something. Whoosh, low tone. Plural, third person, plural possessive.
Hastu.
Still. Okay. Halfway done. Now I can get to talk objects. Cut. There's another form.
Ha.
Why would there be cha? In what cases would there be cha? When the next letter is a D or a T, optional for it to go cha. So people might say shtuqa khatati. They might say shtuqa khatati. Totally fine. Okay. First person plural. They love us. Who said that? Second person. It. Second person plural. Ye. You notice? The object pronoun for the third person human. Zero. Or up. And when would it become up?
He or she is doing it to him or her.
Yeah. So when the third person object, third person subject, it will become a up.
There's a couple more things you have to do too, right?
Huh?
There's a couple more things that have to do there too, right?
Well, there's a couple of there's some other situations where it would revert back. But the default is to think that it just goes to up. But if there are other characteristics in there, like if there's an ergative marker, then it would go away. Then the indefinite human has two possibilities. Ha or ho. Ut. So the reflexive marker won't always be there, but if it's there, it will be the short form, the SH, and the object marker. And what's the third person plural marker?
Us.
What else might it be?
Us with an A.
An S. And why would it just be an S? It would contract. It's optional for it to contract if there's the sound before it is a vowel. If there's an open-ended word before it, it might be an S. Okay, subject. First person singular.
Huh?
Cha. First person plural.
Took.
Took. Second person singular. It. Second person plural. Third person.
Zero.
Zero. Always.
This was on the test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
The independent, or sorry, indefinite human. Whoosh. And also us. Postpositional or the empty base forms.
Aching.
Ach'ii. And so we write these with a hyphen on the end because there would usually be some directional suffix that comes in the end.
Can that one also be hard?
Yeah. And that's in the case of especially ach'in, chan. First person first. Second person singular. E. E. And we'll look at examples of all of these. The ones I would really, so the first person first persons, the second persons, the third persons, the pluralizer, you should really understand how those function by the end of the semester. going through this pronoun tree. The next thing is, what are the five types of Tlingit verbs? Motion.
State.
State. Event.
Action.
Act or action. The fifth one?
Hard.
Position. There's not very many, there's just a few. What are conjugation prefixes? Zero.
Cut.
Hmm?
Cut.
Mhm.
Not.
Okay. So those are the four. Zero, na, ga, ka. Zero and na don't really have any sort of embedded meaning, but ga is generally upward and ka is generally downward. Okay, and we'll come back to this last one when we get back. I put go in there for the example, which is terrible because I meant to write do. So we'll go through these examples, but there is one thing that I want to do, one last thing. These are potential stem variation combinations. There are four of them which do not exist. The four of them which you will not see, I'll change the color. That one. That one. That. Why wouldn't you see those? Verbs don't go short and long. They don't. Sometimes you'll see them written if there's a yet after or some other things after. And they call that tone stealing, but that's probably just saying that tone is higher than the other one, which is actually still high tone.
So do you want to repeat that again?
So verbs don't go short and long. If we just sort of remember that, verbs have three possibilities. Long and high, long and low, short and high. Those are the three possibilities for that stem. And that stem is going to change based on the verb mode. The other thing is if it has a pinched ending, it will also not have a long low form. Okay. This took longer than I thought. What the heck? Okay, so bring your sentences back. Find me, what did I say, 20? Find 20 place names that have some directional thing built into them. We'll start looking at táax'aa. We'll start blowing those sentences up, just so we can start seeing how they put together. Chief, put Jay up. A.